Hello, welcome to another edition of Eric's Electronics, and this is a miscellaneous Monday. Today we're going to do something a little different. It will seem like it ought to be a simple thing, but it turns out to be not so simple. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the interior battery of this device. One last piece of housekeeping here. During this particular video, you're going to see a lot of changes between sound quality, sound type, even perhaps the video quality. What we're doing here is we're going to use this video as a test bed to determine what's our best mix of sound input, video input, and all of that. And rather than edit everything out and say, well, the best one, we're going to then reshoot everything, I felt like it'd be even more authentic to just show you just the journey that we're going on in terms of producing videos. I promised when we began that this would be a journey, not only a journey in your understanding about electronics, but also my journey in terms of understanding how to produce a video like this. So if you will bear with me, we will have to go through this sort of uncomfortable and even awkward transition right now. I can tell you that the next clip is the sound will be particularly muddy, and so we're going to try and adjust that post-production, but this is what it is. So bear with us, and as I said, the next clip will be talking about the amateur bands and what this device does, and then we'll get into the actual teardown and replacement of the battery.
All right, here's the Yaesu FT900 high-frequency transceiver. You'll see, obviously, it's just printed out right here. Now, the high frequency has a technical meaning. Amateur radio guys are licensed and capable of transmitting on all kinds of frequencies, and it begins with what's called the high frequencies. And what do we mean by high frequency? Well, here's something that every radio amateur is very familiar with. These are all the radio amateur bands that are available to them. And that particular transceiver can transmit on everything from 160 meters, 1.8 megahertz, just about AM radio range, all the way up to, actually we get up here into the microwave range. But the transceiver is able to transmit and receive from this section here all the way up to about here. And so these frequencies from basically about 3 megahertz up to 30 megahertz is considered high frequency. And then you get into, so we have 7 megahertz, 10, 14, 18, 21, 24, and then 28 up to 29, almost 30 megahertz here. And that's considered all high frequency. Above that, you get into very high frequency and then ultra high frequency up here. So the band, the frequency distribution goes from extremely low frequency, very low frequency, to low frequency, medium frequency, high, very high, ultra high, extremely high, and it just goes up. That's how you divide up the frequency wavelengths. This transceiver, again, as I said, will transmit and receive everything from about 3 megahertz up to actually past 30. And of course, and it will receive on all of that, but only transmit on the amateur bands where it's legal. So we haven't fired it up, but here's kind of just the basic layout. Here will be the display. We'll see the frequency. Here's the power to turn it on. The automatic tuner, some accessories here for how the microphone is going to work, various settings for power. This is one that will tell me to go from everything from about 10 to 100 watts worth of power. This is the big tuning knob. These buttons show the kind of transmission that the device will engage in, the mode of transmission, everything from single sideband, continuous wave, amplitude modulation, and FM frequency modulation. Again, for purposes of this video, you don't need to know what those are, but again, all these knobs and dials and all this very, very cool stuff. So this is something that for an amateur radio operator, he'd be very familiar with how to get in and out of this. Now, let me show you what the actual problem is. So to get it powered up, amateur radio gear almost universally operates off the principle of 13.8 volts, which is what we all think we can get out of a car battery. A car battery is rated for 12 volts, but for our purposes, we use 13.8. And so we use these special connectors and a power supply, which is off the screen. And that's how I'm going to get power to this unit. So I'm going to plug this into the back, and then we'll power the unit up. All right, so I've turned on the exterior power supply, which is off the screen over here. And here is the unit, and now it's ready to be turned on. So we're going to turn it on by just pressing and holding this power button, okay? I'm going to say it's not attached to any antennas. We're not going to be transmitting at all. As a matter of fact, just to prove the point, I'm going to take the microphone out here. We just press that down and pull it out. Take the microphone out so that we're not in any danger of transmitting. So I'm going to turn it on, press and hold. And you'll see that it starts up right away at 7 megahertz. And you'll notice there's a 7 point zip, and then actually a little divider here for even greater precision. Now you'll notice that when this turned on, it turned on immediately to 7 megahertz. Now this is the way the radio is supposed to work. Now when I dial it around, you notice that I dial here, there we go, and let's say we're going to tune this up. Notice that, oh, listen to that. There we go. So you got something coming in there. That's kind of cool. All right. Can turn up the sound here. Now, so now I'm tuned to 7.029.13 megahertz. Here's how the radio is supposed to work. Now, when I'm done transmitting, which by the way, I would never be able to transmit on this frequency because this is outside of my privileges. Here's what would happen. I'd turn it off. I'd say goodbye, good night, thanks for all the fish, and then I turn it off. Boom. So what we see here is the exterior power supply. And what it does is it takes the line power from the house, from the plug, and it converts it to the direct current 13.8 volts that then feeds the transceiver. So now what I'm going to do is turn this off, because this is what I would do at the end of the night. I turn off the transceiver, and now I'm going to turn off the power supply. Now there's no power to the transceiver, right? And so the battery inside here is dead. And that's not a surprise. This transceiver has been around, hanging around for years, actually in somebody's garage before I got it. And I only have had it for, just a few months myself. And so I noticed this, and so I realized I need to change the battery here. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to change the backup battery. So that's the problem. We have a dead battery inside the unit. Now, it turns out that it's hard to get at the battery. You actually have to disassemble the unit a little bit and then get to the battery. Now, I got this unit without the original instruction manual, and so the internet is a great place, so I printed that off. Here's the operating manual. This is a manual that would have been nicely printed and included with the unit when it was sold. At the same time, what I also did not get is the technical manual for the various alignment procedures, assembly and disassembly. Also, the internet is a wonderful place, and I have the documentation there as well. So we're going to be referring to that documentation as we go through the steps. Here's the technical supplement for this particular device. And under it, there is a section that actually says battery replacement. So we just, open it up and we look over here, and here it is, circuit board access, battery replacement, and CPU resetting. It's right there under section 2. So we're going to go there and take a look at what it is to replace the battery. Under the battery replacement, we see right here, referring to the photograph, remove the 2 screws from both sides of the front panel and loosen the other set, which is covered in a previous section. Gently fold down the front panel from the chassis and change up the backup cell. There it is, right there. Just use your fingers to remove the old cell from its holder. Don't grab it with metal tweezers. Replace only with a Sony lithium type CR2032. So I went down to my local hardware store and bought a couple of 2032 cells here, kind of large button cells. And these are the new batteries right here. And so what we're going to do is now take apart the panel and get at the battery compartment. The transceiver is kind of cool, as was the practice in starting in the 80s. The front panel just comes right off, so just press and the panel comes off. Boom, done. The next step is to remove the 4 screws, one here, here, and then 2 on the back. And for that, we're just going to use a Phillips head screwdriver. I'm going to put this down here. Now, the screws are probably in there kind of tight, and I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but when you're concerned about screws, you don't want to just put the screwdriver in and just start turning. You want to actually apply a little bit of downward pressure on the screw to make sure that it doesn't strip. The last thing you want is for the screwdriver to just kind of slip out like that, because that's going to strip the head of the screw. So we don't want that. We want to press down on it to make sure that doesn't happen. So with just a little bit of force, and then yep, just as I thought, it's a little tough. I'm not as happy about that. Okay, so maybe, let's talk about going to a different screwdriver size. So here's the screwdriver. It fits a little bit better, and as I put a lot of pressure on it, it will turn, but boy, I tell you, that one was tough. So I'm just going to take this screwdriver and just take the screw out. That's done. Screwdriver here, take that out. And of course, now that we have small little bits, what we're going to do, let's get them out here where you can see them. I'm going to find a small box where we're going to hold those bits. So here's my small box. I'll put the small bits in the box, put that over to the side, go and work on the back. Turn that back around, and now the 2 screws that are going to come off are here and here. So I'm going to work on that. All right, so I've pre-loosened the screws so that they come off a little bit easier on camera. Taking the screw out. There we go. Pulls out just a little bit there. And over to the next screw. Fell. Put the screws in the little bits box. Put that over to the side. Now we're ready to remove the top cover. Okay, so now we're just going to see if we can pop the top cover open, and there it comes pretty easily. This is the first time I've opened this, so you're seeing what I'm seeing here. You can see, oh, there's a connector here. We're going to have to detach that and make sure that we can get the cover all the way off. There's some foam here, so I'm going to do all of that off camera. Okay, I've gently disconnected this connector and this connector here, and kind of pivoting the cover on the top. I'm going to be a little bit careful there because we have this cable over here that's still connected. But then as we move the unit around, we can see over here is the oh, can't see that, sorry. Over here is the battery. So we're going to pull that out and put the new one in. This is a little tricky. I just kind of wanted to work this through out on camera. So I'm going to pull this wire down. I'm going to push this down and pull it forward. And it should then, there we go, be available. Just pull it out. The inner disc is towards the front, and we're going to put a new one in just like that. Okay, so now we have the new battery here. You'll notice there's a little cover here to prevent it from discharging early. Just pull that one off, put it back in the way we got it, kind of angle it in, push it, and there we are. We're back in business. Now it's a matter of just putting it all back together, buttoning it all back up. Now there are a lot of interesting things going on here that I'd love to be able to get into, like, and tear into this and sort of remove these panels and see what's going on. But right now, I'm just interested in replacing the battery, and just let's get to the particular job first before we dive in deeper. So now it's just time to button this unit back up and to see if it's working. So now we have the top cover of this Yaesu FT900 secured. 4 screws, the connectors all connected back up over here, and now it's just a matter of putting back the plate. Snaps just right back into place like so. Turning on the power and seeing what happens. Turn the external power supply on. and we're going to turn on the power. And just as I expected, there is no problem turning it back on. Now,
and there we go. We have replaced the battery. We have, I've done off camera, tested its functionality, and it seems to be working just fine. So we successfully have opened up a piece of consumer electronics with just simple tools using a screwdriver, and then closed it back up, being careful and of course making use of the manual where it was available, and we have successfully done our job. So I hope you enjoyed that little piece of work, and if you did and you're not opposed, go ahead and give it a click over here or over here. And thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you again here at Eric's Electronics.